Well, I grew up in New Hampshire, but I've lived in Albuquerque for the last 10, 11 years. So at this point, I pretty much consider myself from Albuquerque.
How did you get started in game development?
Um, I think even before I had actual programming, I'd still constantly make like little board games and such. But actually, like programming games, I got started when in middle school. A friend of mine was in the Boy Scouts, and some of the older boys were doing like a little intro to game dev thing for their technology badge. I asked if I could tag along, and it was like see, it was a program called Learn to Program Basic, I think. So it was like intro to very simplified basic with kind of tutorial thing, pretty much the equivalent of like Clippy from Microsoft Word, except like video game related, trying to teach you code. And I just kind of breezed through the tutorials and have, you know, got obsessed with it and pretty much have been doing it as a hobby ever since. And now trying to switch it over to a career.
All right. When did you start working on Moonstrider?
So Moonstrider, I started working on pretty much at the start of 2015, so roughly 8 months ago.
All right. What inspired you to create Moonstrider?
So actually, the inspiration from this didn't come from a video game, but the book *The Little Prince*, which is like a French short story about a little kid that lives on a small little planet with 3 volcanoes and a flower. So that kind of just popped into my head when I was thinking of game ideas, and then mechanically, it was definitely inspired by Super Mario Galaxy, Risk of Rain, Metroid, FTL. But yeah, that initial genesis definitely came from the Little Prince.
All right. What about game development do you find most rewarding?
Definitely being able to take ideas of a fun video game, because everyone has ideas for a fun video game that they want to see, but it's being able to take that spend a few hours and make something appear. In fact, every time I'd have to do something boring like do menu design or rebindable keys, I'll kind of like go and like make an enemy afterwards, just because that's the fun part.
All right. And why did you decide to put Moonstrider on Stream Greenlight?
Well, I am completely unknown in the games industry, so if I wanted to get my game out there and actually make money off it, which I do, I'm not trying to be greedy. I just want to be able to make games for a living, and survive off it. Without a publisher, getting it on Steam Greenlight and selling it on Steam is pretty much your only option. So
All right. And were you more interested in putting it on the PC than other consoles or that sort of thing?
I'm definitely focusing on PC just because that's what I have. We have done one test on Mac. We can do it on that as well. I just don't have a Mac to currently do any builds. And consoles, I would like to, but it's one of those. If it happens, there's some people that I can kind of contact to try to go down that avenue. But I think I need to get the game a little more, work on the game a little more first. Get it out there, get it so that people actually have heard of Moonstrider, before I just go and contact, Sony saying, "Hey, can I put my game on the PlayStation?"
Right.
Yeah.
All right. And what did you major in college?
Well, for undergrad and graduate, I got degrees in mathematics, both from New Mexico Tech, and then actually a minor in biology as well. So pretty much, if I wasn't doing game development, I'd probably be writing some biological simulation software, some biological modeling software. In fact, I'd say before Moonstrider, probably one of my proudest programs was a forest fire simulation. So, which mathematically is very cool. In real life, it's terrifying, but the math behind fire is cool.
So when you were in college, were you interested in game design or hoping to go into that?
Not really. So all throughout undergrad, I was very much of the mind, all right, I'm going to get my undergrad in math, I'm going to get my master's in math, and I'm going to go get my PhD in math and, become an academic. I was still doing game design as a hobby, either, making like, custom maps for video games or, ongoing role-playing games, designing systems. I'd always be the DM. But then when I reached, masters, I realized I love learning about math. I love teaching math. I love talking about math, but I'm not big on mathematical research. So as, the year kind of, as my last year of my master's started to finish up, I was like, okay, I love the teaching. I love all the cool stuff with math, but I don't really like the research aspect. There's a saying, 90% of everything you try in math will fail, which is kind of true. It's fun in a depressing way. So, and then it's like, okay, well, I just finished my thesis, which maybe 20 people will ever read. So I was thinking, it's like, okay, well, I've always loved game development. I'd been learning Game Maker for about a year at that point, felt pretty confident in the code. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try to make video games for a year, see if I can actually live off that, because it's a way to reach a lot more people than 20 people reading a thesis, and hopefully make people have fun. That's kind of why I want to do it.
Do you have an estimate of when Moonstrider will be finished?
So finished is kind of an interesting question. We're definitely planning on early access release, which means we're going to put the game out there and kind of update it constantly over time. So that we're actually hoping on early September for putting it out there initially. And essentially, our minimum state that we will call the game done would probably be around December, January, February, somewhere in that range. That's like the 8 playable characters, X systems, some other secret stuff I don't want to say, but final bosses, that kind of stuff in. But and that's always been kind of, okay, this is what I want. This is the finished state of it in a way. But if everyone, if it turns out people really like the game, then I'll probably keep working on it until I consider it done. It's one of those hard things with any creative endeavor. It is, when do you call it done? And I guess it's just when you stop working on it. So.
All right. And just with the microphone cord, just try to move it so it's not touching your arm or that sort of thing.
Okay.
Because it can pick up noise.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see. Why do you attend AGDG?
So the Albuquerque Game Developers Guild is, it's a great way to get feedback, sure, on the game. I'll show it off every 2 weeks or so, pretty much. Here's something new I'm working on. What do you guys think? Last week, actually, I had just gotten the rough draft of the tutorial finished, so I literally just handed the tutorial, started the tutorial, handed the controller to someone else, and had them play through it. But honestly, it's the motivation, I guess, is another huge part. It's knowing that, okay, yeah, there's other people out there that think, intellectually about games, that want to, talk about the good parts and the bad parts of game development, and are really encouraging and want to see, pretty much everyone in the guild, I think, wants to see me finish this project, and get it out there just as much as I want to see, Kurt get Stellar out there, or Ryan and Shondine get Skypats out there. So.
How do you think AGDG becoming a nonprofit organization will affect the local game development community?
Well, I can't see the guild forming a nonprofit doing anything bad. At worst case, it's neutral. Where it's like, okay, we're a nonprofit now, yay, and then nothing happens. In best case, though, I'd love to see the guild set up something kind of like the Dutch Game Garden, where they actually have a building that indies can use use their resources, their office space, work collaboratively, and really encourage game development in Albuquerque, both not just in the motivational the motivational talking sense like I mentioned, but in an actual material and monetary sense as well.
Have you always played video games, or did you start playing them later in your life?
I started playing video games when I was 4, so pretty much all my life. Yeah. First one was Kirby's Dream Land for the original Game Boy. This was closely followed by Tetris and Super Mario Land. I think that was the one for Game Boy.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else we haven't covered that you'd like to add?
Saving hard questions. I guess so one thing that I get that a lot of my friends, when I'm talking to them, or even people, acquaintances, and I say, yeah, I'm doing, working on video games. A lot of them are really, really jealous. They're like, oh, you get to work on video games all day, and the sad truth is, it's not all super fun. I mean, for every fun thing, there's kind of two things that really aren't quite as fun. I mean, I love all of it, but yesterday I spent 6 hours, setting up rebindable keys. That wasn't really that enjoyable, and I think the fact that, the general public, I guess, doesn't really see that, and I think it would be nice if more people, I guess, understood that game development isn't just sitting around playing video games all day. It's, it actually is hard work, and a lot of it is, I guess, in a way, kind of emotionally draining, too, because it's like, okay, I've spent 8 months on this, creative work that I have to put out there to the internet. And the internet is not the nicest place. So it's a very daunting task, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of course I say all that, and I can't think of anything else I'd rather do. So, yeah.
I think there's one question related to that I skipped over. How has the feedback you've received affected how you develop the game?
A lot of the feedback that I've mainly gotten, or the most important feedback, has honestly been the little things. I mean, there's plenty of people who are offering ideas like, oh, you should do this, very much like the big stuff, like, oh, you should be able to slingshot around planets. And I'm like, well, Kerbal Space Program already does that really well, and I don't want to be Kerbal Space Program. So it's a lot of the little details, like, maybe watching people play the game at a convention and noticing that they're having trouble dodging this attack, or, they're having trouble understanding what this means. So a lot of it is thinking about what that means and going, okay, well, maybe I need to make this attack more obvious, maybe the enemy needs a bit more of like a wind-up, instead of just going, ha, they go, for some way to telegraph the attack, stuff like that. It's polishing all the little details to make it good.
Has there been any like negative feedback or sort of hurtful feedback, or has it mostly been positive?
I honestly can't think of any feedback I would say is hurtful. I mean, when we were at we were at a MomoCon about 2 months ago, which was a decent-sized convention over in Atlanta. Most people were saying nice stuff. I mean, there wasn't anyone that put down the game and said, oh, I hate this is awful. There were definitely people that you could tell didn't really like it, or weren't really into it, I guess, but that doesn't offend me. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. If they don't like, if they don't like roguelikes in space, then that's fine. Yeah, but no, nothing really negative, I guess. Even like the Steam Greenlight page, we had about 70 comments, I think, and most of them were very positive. A few of the negative ones were like, oh, I don't like games with random generation, or, oh, I won't buy because there's no Russian language. I had to run that one through Google Translate because it was in Russian. Stuff like that. Where I'm like, okay, yeah, I totally understand you not being interested. So overall, it's been really positive and encouraging.